This is
Oh,
Gabriel Gonzalez for Cage Side Press here with Ffion Davies, who takes on Morgan Black this Saturday, May 18th at Abu Dhabi Extreme Championship. Ffion, so I'm assuming you're already overseas. Just tell me, how was the trip over and everything else?
yeah, it was easy. I'm in Paris now, and I actually came early because there was the Taylor Swift concert this weekend. Um, so I thought I'd come early and make the most of it.
Okay, awesome, awesome. So, major Swiftie, I'd imagine, at the Eras Tour.
Yes, it was good.
All
It was a
right,
good warm up.
I'm gonna be very honest with you. Super Swifty over here. I want to know everything. Did you dress up for the concert? Do you have a favorite era, favorite song? Tell me everything.
I did, yeah. I went Reputation era. That was my outfit of choice, and it was amazing. I got front row, so I was delighted.
Oh my
Like I was on the
gosh.
side of the stage, but we did make eye contact. I'm pretty sure.
You know what? There you go. BFFs already. Do you have a favorite Taylor Swift song?
Yes, but it depends on my mood.
Okay,
Um,
what are a couple?
but all too well, but a 10-minute version is probably my favorite.
Okay,
Like all
okay.
overall, but
I'm very impartial to You Belong With Me, but that's just me. But yeah, you can't see it at, well, you might be able to. If you look right here, that poster's from my Eras tour here in Los Angeles. So
oh, cool.
yes, yeah. So very cool. Let's get, before we lose too many viewers talking about
Yeah.
Taylor,
Sorry.
taking on Morgan Black. So I'll be honest, primarily an MMA reporter over here. So one of the things that I always find interesting when I talk about a grappler in a grappling match, when I talk about MMA, okay, their style, more striker, more grappler. When you're talking about a grappler, how does one necessarily approach, you know, stylistically? How do you talk about a matchup like that?
I'd say we have very similar games, to be honest, but I think like style wise, I guess some people would be like, oh, like they like to pass guard, or maybe they favor bottom and playing guard. Maybe they invert a lot. I guess it's kind of like variations like that. I consider myself very much like a top player. I do like to play guard as well, but I prefer to be on top because I just think if you can wrestle someone and take them down, like that's like the best path to victory. Like for me at least. And I come from like a judo background, so I like to exchange into stand up as well. Not that kind of stand up, but obviously.
I did want to ask a bit about your background because I read, started in rugby, then judo, and then transitioned to MMA, but really just wanted to focus on Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. I have that path correct?
Yeah, like the plan was always initially it was like do jiu-jitsu, get my level up because when I started MMA, I didn't know any jiu-jitsu, I just had judo. And I wanted to make sure I had actual skill set. So I thought, I'll focus on jiu-jitsu for a while and then I just never went back.
Now, can I ask, as a kid, were you someone who was very active? Like, was it something that, like, you know what, maybe getting into fights and parents said, nah, th this girl needs an outlet? Just how did your athletic career start before you really focused on the MMA and jiu-jitsu part of it?
I definitely didn't get into any fights. I was definitely really timid when I was a kid. But pretty much I always really liked like wrestling type sports. Like I liked rugby, which has the tackling. Obviously judo was what I trained most of my like childhood. But my mother and my father as well, they both work in mental health and they had to learn how to restrain people. And so the coach, like the guy who came in to coach them was like a judo guy. And then they started going down to the gym and training. And then my mother stuck it out and enjoyed it. Initially, it was kind of for my brother to start, but I would just get on the mat um, and just start joining the class without being asked to. And I just loved it. And he didn't really like it that much, so it worked out.
One of the things that I think is really cool, obviously building a brand as a jiu-jitsu player, I think that if you ask a lot of people, maybe even several years ago, not too long ago, it kind of felt like it was such a small niche that it's like, well, either you transition to MMA or, it's kind of going to just stay a little bit smaller. the game is really different now. Obviously, with Abu Dhabi doing this kind of event, it's a huge platform. You see more places like the UFC getting involved with their invitational, one championship having submission
Mm.
champions exclusively. I do want to ask you, what is it like being a major player in that? Because if I'm being honest, great record, you're on a roll. Perfect age to really be striking while the iron is hot. What is it like to be a player right now with so many opportunities to just be grappling? There's not as much pressure, I'd imagine, to like get into MMA and be that kind of fighter.
It's really exciting. It's a really exciting time because it is that thing now where it's like you said, it was kind of okay, you get to a point where you achieve those jiu-jitsu goals like in IBJJF or like the tournament circuit, and then you're like, okay, well now I need to make money to either eventually open a school or just to, I don't know, like I don't know what plans people may have, but and it's always like naturally, and I guess even now people are like, when are you gonna do MMA? But now with like seminars and shows and events and like all these events we have, and there's a lot of pressure on events now to make sure there's prize money as well. I think that's becoming more of a thing. Um, yeah, like I feel like it's an exciting time. I feel like, ADCC added an additional women's division and an absolute. So that side of the sport was also growing, which is cool. But yeah, it's also overwhelming because then you don't know, like, should I sign with this? Like, or should I go here and fight here? Or like, yeah, it's a little there's no like real off season. So it's kind of you have to like pick and choose and prioritize like that. It's a little overwhelming sometimes,
I
but
would
exciting.
imagine I would imagine it's a little bit like and this might be quite the contrast, but like golf or tennis, there's so many tournaments all year, and it's like, well, one can't actually do every single one of them. So I'd imagine it is strategic to plan out your calendar year and also get that important time off. Would I be right about that?
Yeah, definitely. Like I kind of just build my own schedule because there's events all the time. So I just pick and choose now. I used to feel like I had to do everything. And that's just for me, at least it's not sustainable. So yeah, I just kind of pick what I want to do and focus on that and keep it fun. Like train hard, but enjoy it too.
And then another question, the MMA aspect of it all. Obviously, you had a fight and you had some amateur fights as well. Personally,
Yeah.
the thing I always find funny about this is, I think people always want to ask the jiu-jitsu, men and women, like, well, when are you going to do MMA? And it's like, I would imagine for me, if I were a submission grappler, like, why do I need to do MMA? I don't want to get punched in the face. Why can't I just do jiu-jitsu? Do you feel the
Yeah.
same way, or is there still a little bit of that itch, like, one of these days, maybe do transition and do that a little bit?
I kind of go back and forth on it to be honest, where it's like I do feel like it's not a necessity anymore, which is really cool. And I do kind of think I think people need to understand it's not the same. Well, I think people do understand that, but like it's not the same sport. And I don't think it's a natural progression. I think it's very much a separate sport, which is why it's really impressive to me when someone comes from like a jiu-jitsu background and then gets to like the highest level in the UFC. Like that's crazy to me. Because you've got to learn this whole new thing of like striking and wrestling, because a lot of jiu-jitsu people aren't proficient wrestling or in the stand-up. So there is that thing of like I respect MMA enough to know that you can't just wander in and hop in the cage and be like, oh, my jiu-jitsu is going to save me. Like I'd have to really dedicate a lot of time um, to all sorts of aspects of the game to actually get to a level where I could be competitive and it's even safe for me to do it. Um, but also like I like the thought of starting something new. Like when I went from judo, when I got my black belt in judo, and then kind of starting again in a new sport with jiu-jitsu, it's like I feel like it'd be the same thing. And that I think a lot of people don't like that, but I think that's exciting. I think that's really cool and fun. But there's like I have other aspirations as well where I want to open a gym and things like that. So I don't know how much time I have. Like I'm 29. I'm not old at all, but I always have like big goals and I want to be the best at anything I do. So I just don't know how it fits into that timeline really.
And only so many hours in the day, right? I completely get
Yeah.
it.
And I
You,
like my brain.
of
I like my
course.
brain. There's not
Uh,
many cells left in there.
Oh my gosh, no, come on. Seems like you're doing just fine. But no, I definitely get it. I think sometimes it's like, you know what? I wouldn't want, it's like, why do you guys all want me to get punched in the face? That's a little unfair.
Well, I
I
think some people would like to punch me in the face, to be fair. So I think they're like, get in there.
think they're just, probably because you've choked them out, I'd imagine. Seem very personable. I did want to ask you, still based out of New York when you're not competing? Is that correct?
Yeah. Yeah,
Uh,
yeah. At the moment, I'm still in New York.
Got what can I ask, what is your team? Obviously, there's a lot, also that also, help with the MMA fighters like, John Danaher and the likes. Just who do you train with out in New York? Or what team?
Essential Jiu-Jitsu. Essential Jiu-Jitsu. JT Torres is the instructor there. He's like two-time ADCC world champion. So in good hands, and he's great, and the whole team is so nice. Yeah, it's good. I love
Okay,
it.
okay. And then talking about it, obviously this is a great showcase and it's a very fun event. Obviously, big star and Benoit Saint-Denis at the top of it. But following this match with Morgan Black, what are some of the goals that you do have for 2024? And is it about some of those winning some of those key tournaments in the circuit? Is about maybe those showcases like One Championship has and being someone who showcases your skills on that kind of platform? What are some of your goals?
I think for me now, like ADCC is the biggest thing coming up, and this year I sort of opted out of gi season because in jiu-jitsu we've got no gi and we've got the gi, and this event for me is no gi. So I focus on that. Or normally I do both, but it's again it becomes too much. I don't want to get burnt out. That's another thing is like avoiding burnout with all the different events all the time. So I opted out of the gi season this year just to focus on no gi and each event, like this event, obviously, I'm always going to win. I'm always trying my best, but I also need to make sure that I'm pushing myself to try new things in these matches before the biggest event, which is ADCC. And then after that, I would really like to delve into like fighting for something like one or whatever it is, and because that's like kind of where like, that's like the pinnacle, right? Like that getting to do that. Especially like I like how jiu-jitsu is kind of getting treated almost in that same way with MMA, with shows and things. And I think that is, that puts pressure on IBJJF, on ADCC and these events to pay athletes more. Because if I can go and fight on a show and have one match and it's fun and it's a great experience, like we're out here the whole week, there's a media team, they treat us well, that's the kind of thing you want to do rather than you go to a tournament, you fight five people who are the best in the world and you get kind of next to nothing at the end of it. Um, it's quite, it's a little after a while, that's not so fun anymore to train. So yeah, I'd really like to move into like fighting just on events. And yeah, that'd be the goal.
That actually answered my next question because I was wondering, it's like you get so used to the tournaments, but just showing up for one match, I would almost feel like, is there a little more pressure? Because I think in the tournament, I don't know who my opponent's gonna be, et cetera, et cetera. Whereas this one
Mhm.
match, the whole thing has to be built on you being more ready than this one singular person. Is that a different mentality to approach?
Yes and no. Like I feel like a tournament you have to sort of you stay in the game. Like you'll have your first match, the adrenaline dump, and then you've got to keep yourself in the zone the whole time for like numerous matches. And like you don't know who's going to be next because you can't guarantee who. You can assume sometimes. Like I think this person would probably come through to the next round, but you don't know which side of the bracket you're on. Obviously, like I know I'm fighting Mo, for example, but I never ever strategically just focus on one person. I have a game plan that's personal to me that I want to execute that's based around what I've been training and working on, but I never obsess about what the other person does. It's good to have an awareness, but I like to be ready. Like, say if she had to pull out the day before, like God forbid, and then I have a new opponent, it's like, well, if I was obsessing about what she does, Dream, I can't control that then. And also, I think when you're obsessing about what the other person does, you kind of almost get like paralysis where you don't want to move, you don't want to try things because, oh, but she's so good here. Whereas if you just trust yourself and trust what you've worked on, you have control over that. Like I can't control what she does, but I can definitely control what I do. But yeah, I think events are just more fun to be honest, because I don't know, it doesn't feel like tournaments are always like it always feels like heavy pressure scenarios. Obviously, I always want to win, but it's also fun to be here.
Of course, I can imagine, and certainly this one in Abu Dhabi looks like a big one. I'm
Yeah.
not going to hold you anymore. Just I'll leave you with this final question: how does Ffion Davis get the victory against Miss Morgan Black on Saturday?
Um, I I I don't have a specific way that I want it to go. I definitely want to get a submission. Like I always want to get a submission. But I want to be on top. That's something I want to wrestle her. That's something I really want to do because I see she's got really good wrestling. I think that'll be a really cool challenge for me, especially in lead to ADCC. So I think we'll have some really good exchanges in the wrestling. Yeah.
Well, I'm looking forward to it. I appreciate the time. I know this came together at the last minute.
No
Ladies and
worries.
gentlemen, once again, Ffion Davies, Morgan Black, this Saturday, Abu Dhabi. You guys are not going to want to miss it.